Okay, we're ready.
Thank you, John. Want to welcome everyone and thank you for attending. Today's program is submitting a successful PDA application. That's the Preservation Design Awards. This is, I believe, the third time that we've done this, and we felt it was important to do today because the application has changed. We've updated a few things, and we wanted to make sure that everyone who is considering applying is up to speed on all those changes. So I want to start here by introducing our jury, or pardon me, jury, our speakers today. As John said, I'm Cindy Heisman, the Executive Director at the California Preservation Foundation. Helping today is John Haber, California Preservation Foundation's Field Services Director, Bill Schaefer, our CPF's Development Vice President and co-chair of the Preservation Design Awards, and Andrew Wolfram with TEF Design, who is the co-chair of the Design Awards program. So I want to thank everyone for speaking, and again, thank you for attending. Feel free to ask questions. We'll have time for you to ask those questions and get answers later in the program. We're going to do a quick overview of the process, but really kind of dive into the actual application, the information that's required for a successful submittal. So as John noted, we're going to cover some main points today. We're going to go over the elements of the application, the information you need to have on hand and ready to complete the application. We'll review the online application, taking you through a mock-up of that and highlight the new changes. We'll show you some sample applications, what they look like when they're finished and what the jury receives. We'll discuss additional information that is needed to enhance your application. We'll talk about how the projects are judged, and then we'll get some tips from the jury, from our co-chairs. So the first thing we want to talk about is what projects are eligible. Well, and I want to just start by saying that we have really an excellent outline of all the information that we're covering today on our website. So make sure you go there and take a look at it, but we're here to answer your questions. So what projects are eligible? There's really two criteria. The building is either 50 years old or is listed on a local, state, or federal historic register or inventory. This is important to note because you could have a building that's listed on a local inventory, but is less than 50 years old. And we have made awards to projects that met that criteria. They were less than 50, but they were locally significant. The project must have been completed within the last 5 years from the date of submittal, that is submittal of the nomination or the application. And it has to fit one of the categories that we assign for awards. And we'll go over that later. Who can nominate a project? Anyone can nominate a project. Typically, our projects are nominated from people that are familiar with the project, the architect, the owner, an engineer, a consultant. What we do require is that permission is given from the owner and the designers to nominate the project. How do I nominate? The nominations are entirely online. Previously submitted projects that did not win awards can reapply. There's no limit to how many times you can apply, except you're limited by that 5-year period. So we've had projects that have been submitted numerous times, and then they received an award where they didn't get in their previous attempts. The jury changes every year, so people see things differently that the previous juries did not notice in the past. So that has happened. So we would encourage everyone to consider reapplying if you've submitted in the past. The categories. Now, we've made some changes to the categories for awards. We've consolidated and we've added some. So the first category is preservation or restoration. So in that category, you can enter either project, but you select that category. It's preservation or restoration. Rehabilitation, reconstruction, or contextual infill. Craftsmanship, preservation technology, cultural resources, studies and reports, exhibits. And the new one is cultural heritage or intangible assets. That is a new category. So we encourage you if you're considering entering in any of these categories, to look at the definition of these categories on our website. What information is needed? Well, you have to submit the application and you have to get signatures, as I mentioned, from parties who either own or design. They would lead architects, lead engineers, or the owners. There's a narrative that's required, and John will go over that in just a moment. So this is the jury's chance to understand what was done that is award worthy on this project. And so depending on the type of category, there are specific questions that address each. For example, there are questions about reports that are specific to any submittal in that category. Slides, we require 12 PowerPoint slides, and we'll show you examples of a project that was submitted. So you get some understanding of what's included in the slides. We require high resolution photos, at least 6. So those would come in a separate folder with photographers' releases for those photographs. So I'm going to hand it over to John so he can walk you through the online application.
I pasted a few things into the chat box for you to use at your leisure. Mainly, we found that applicants like to fill things out before they actually go to the application form. They just want to know what to expect so that they can ask people and have responses from people in terms of especially the narrative. So this application worksheet contains all 7 steps of the application on it in a Word format. You can copy and paste into it. And then it makes it easier when you're submitting the application. So we recommend you download that. And then you'll also go to the website at californiapreservation.org/awards, which I'm going to share now. On this page, you'll find instructions for the application. Once we get the recording for this webinar, we'll put it here so you can access the recording as well. There's a general overview of the application, including details on each of the 7 steps. Due dates and all the other information in terms of entry fees and other what sort of projects are eligible and everything. So once you are ready to begin the application, we recommend you go to this entry form tab, type in your first and last name and email address. This will be you will be typing in the first, last, and email address of the person who is processing the application, not the principal or architect or anybody on the team. It's whoever is going to be submitting this information, and whoever wants to receive communications related to the application. We recommend you do your own password. You just type that in here, and as soon as you submit this, you'll receive an email with your username and password. We do recommend that you save that, keep it on hand. We can reset your password on our end if we need to, but it's easier if you just keep it saved and make sure you don't forget it. Once you click that submit button, you'll be taken to the first step of the entry form. As I mentioned, there's 7 steps here. We've tried to make it as easy as possible. Last year, we separated the payment step from the rest of the application, and so it created a lot of redundancies. We're trying to make it easier for people this year. Each of these steps is accessible at any time just by clicking on that step up here on the top bar. So it'll show you what sort of where you are in the status of the application. So if you're on the affiliates page, that will be highlighted blue. The basic details are really just the information we want to know about you in order to reach you. You'll notice this question here asks if you are the principal contact for this entry. Now, this is because people wanted us to reach out to another individual once we made a determination on the application. Usually that's the principal of the firm. Somebody else is filling out the application for them. But if you'd like somebody else to know about the award application and receive the status as soon as that decision is made, you want to click the no button here and then type their name in and their email. Otherwise, if you would like to be the first person to know, you just click yes here. There's the mailing address, the project name, the discipline or area of involvement within that project that you're involved in, the category of the project, and I think we'll go over some of these later if you have questions, the address and the city. You can either save the draft, which immediately saves that page, or when you click on next, it'll take you to the next step. And while you're doing that, it'll automatically save the page that you're on. There are 3 key contacts that we need to reach out to after the application is submitted in order to notify them and ensure that they're aware of the application. And that would be the project lead and principal, the client or owner, or the lead architect, engineer, or designer, and the lead architect, engineer, or designer. So those 3 people are the key people that we need you to fill out completely, including their mailing address, their email, their title, and their firm. Once you've done that, you click on next. Next, we need the affiliates. Now, the affiliates are the whole range of people that work on the project. You can download a template here, which is an Excel format, if you prefer to do that, or you can type them in or paste them into our affiliates form here. We take either format. It allows you to add as many as you'd like, so you can add more just by clicking on the add button. Once you're done, you click next. The narrative and questionnaire, each question has a 40 word maximum. Question 1 is 40 words, question 2 is 100. You'll see that in the text of the question. And these boxes here should be approximately about the length that you should aim for when you're putting in these responses. We want you to stick within the maximum word count as much as possible. We use these descriptions in application or in the Design Awards materials, and we want them to be consistent with other applications. So another thing we provide here is a worksheet link, so that if you need to just click on this and download the worksheet, you could go back, paste them in, and then fill them out when you come back to the application. There's a question on the project significance, which is a checkbox. So if it's more than one designation, you can click it. And then as you continue down the application, it should be pretty explanatory. Some questions are required. Anything in a required format or that is required from us has a red star next to it, which means you have to fill that out. Once you click on next, it'll save and then take you to the upload step. So in the upload step, we give you a breakdown of what we need from you. The affiliate spreadsheet, if you haven't already filled it out on an earlier step, the PowerPoint presentation with your 12 slides, high resolution photographs, including 6 images, additional optional supplements, including letters of recommendation. You can submit architectural plans or reports or other items. And there should be relatively no limit on the amount of files you can upload here. But we recommend just finding the folder where you'd like to upload them from and dragging and dropping. You'll see the status right next to the file. It says 99%. Once it turns to a green check mark, that means the item has been received by us, and you don't need to worry about sending it to us. Otherwise, we have it. And then down here, we have you go over a basic checklist, and this just ensures that you're double checking, making sure that you've submitted everything that we need. One thing that we'd like to know, that we need to know, is who holds the rights to the images that you're submitting for those 6 high resolution images. In previous years, we noticed that people had more than one copyright holder, so we want to know if that's the case. We want you to add more than one copyright holder here just by clicking the add button. And we'll reach out to those people by email to get their permission to use the images. They'll need to sign a release form from us. And then here's the 6 basic check marks for the requirements, the general checklist, and the required uploads. Be sure to read through each of these and make sure that you have provided us with those. Once that's done, you click on next, and then you'll be taken to the payment form. I'm sorry, you'll be taken to the summary of your application. So this gives you a breakdown of every response that you've submitted for every step previous to this. And you can click on the edit button here if you'd like to go back and make any changes before you submit the application. Once you've done that, you can click on next, and then you'll be taken to the payment form. And you'll notice here, if you ever need to go back to any step, you would simply go to that step by clicking on the bar here. So if you need to go back to the affiliates page, you can click on that. When you submit payment, make note of whether or not you're a nonprofit. If you're a nonprofit, you can benefit from the nonprofit discount. Otherwise, the general entry fee is $250. You put in your credit card information. When you click save and continue, your application is considered complete, and we will follow up with you if we see anything that's missing. I'm going to turn it back to Sydney now.
Thanks, John. So once we get that information, we put it into a form for the jury to review. So the jury will receive copies of your narrative and your 12 slides. They will also receive a note or an indication that whether you've submitted supplemental information. There'll be folders specific to each project for any supplemental information that was submitted. I do want to note that when you submit the narrative or the reports, we ask that you redact the names of the principals that worked on the project, the designers, the architects, or those individuals that prepared reports. In some cases, we want the owners of the building to be not redacted, but there are obvious cases where that just doesn't make sense. If you have large public buildings or buildings that are, you know, generally as public buildings, it doesn't make sense to redact. Anyway, so what the jury sees is this. Once we get that information, we put it into a form. We take the narrative, drop it into about a 3 or 4 page form. Again, you're limited, you have a word limit on each of these. It's important that you keep it to those limits because we ask the jury to review these. They have about 2 weeks to review all the materials. We want to make sure that we give them ample time, but we try to keep everything kind of uniform in size so they can they have enough time to go through everything. So this is what the jury receives on the narrative. Again, each of the pieces that every question that you were asked to complete is in here and it's organized. We have the name of the project, we assign it a number, we put in the category that you've entered it in, and then we also indicate if there's additional supplemental information. Once we get that, we also attach to it your 12 slides. So this is just kind of a snapshot of what those 12 slides look like. Then once we get into the jury room, this is what they hear. Between 2015 and 2020, 4 phases of off-season projects were completed at the Greek Theater. In addition to improving the visitor and performer experience and upgrading systems, the projects focused upon repair and rehabilitation of the theater's visible original features. Now we go through it quickly, but they have a chance to review all of this ahead of time. So this is simply done as a refresher to remind them about each project. And then the jury goes into deliberation when we've shown all the projects by category. So I'm going to turn this over to Bill and to Andrew to address some of the specific questions that have come up about the jury's review.
Thank you, Sydney. So I think one thing that's really important to understand for an applicant is the jury is looking at 50 or 60 or maybe 70 projects. They're going to be looking at this material really quickly. And we know you've been working on your projects for years and years, and you love everything about them and you're into all the details, but the jury does not have the advantage of all that context. So you really need to be able to tell your story in a quick, clear way, so it's really, really easy to understand by the jury. So one question is, should you include floor plans? We would encourage you to submit whatever makes your story most clear and most compelling. And often floor plans are a really good way to do that. A floor plan, for example, can clarify what's the area of work in your project. Did you just work on one corner? A floor plan could clarify, this is what the building looked like before, and these are the kinds of changes we made as part of the rehabilitation. So its floor plan really provides great context for the jury to understand the overall project and the work that was done. We do understand that there are projects where floor plans don't make sense. If it's something where it's just a craftsmanship project and you're repairing marble paneling or something like that, and floor plan may not be useful for the jury in that context. But certainly for large scale rehabilitation projects, floor plans are typically very useful. The next question is really about photographs. Good photography is really, really important for the jury to understand the overall scale of the project, the scope of the project, and really helps you put your best foot forward when submitting your project. So we really encourage you to get professional photography. If that's not possible, to really think about the quality of the photographs, to make sure the lighting is good, that the viewpoint is taken at a point in which we can see the kind of scale of the project, and to include both before photographs and after. So we understand what the condition of the building or project was before, and what it looked like when the work was completed. Next slide. So there are definitely special conditions that juries consider. One of them is kind of what was the overall purpose of the project, and that's especially true for reports that you're doing, cultural resource reports. We really want to understand what the kind of underlying purpose and goal was of that report or that analysis. The other thing the jury really looks at closely is what was the community benefit to this project? Was the community involved? Often juries will give awards to projects in which they really felt, even though the project had a lot of funding challenges, maybe wasn't as glamorous as a project in a big city done by a well-funded sponsor, but it was a project that really brought the community together, that had a lot of community impact, that was really meaningful for that location. So those are some of the special considerations that the jury will consider. So Bill, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Sure, thanks, Andrew. So the next question is, what are some of the most common omissions in the narrative? And really what we're looking for the applicant to do is for the submissions to really tell the story, tell why a project deserves an award. So as Andrew was saying, one of the things that's difficult for the jury to see is they're seeing the submission at face value, what was submitted. So very important to tell the story. Before and after photos oftentimes are incredibly helpful. Cindy mentioned and Andrew mentioned submission of floor plans. On that Greek theater submission that Cindy went through quickly, we saw on the floor plan that they showed a timeline of what was added over time and then what areas were rehabilitated. So it's making sure that the narrative clearly delineates what was done and why it's special. Next slide, please. So is there a limit on the number of winning projects? There isn't. So on a typical year, we'll receive between 50 and 70 submissions for projects. Historically, we've had between 15 and 25 award winners on an annual basis, but there really is no limit, and there's no limit on the number of winning projects even per category. So the jury will decide the number of projects and in which categories and award them based on merit. Next slide. So the next and last question is, who serves on the jury? And the jury, it's a very broad range of individuals who serve on the jury. So in the past, it's been architects, landscape architects, developers, historians, contractors, attorneys, you name it. It's the jury is selected sort of based on their contributions and who we think might be a good fit on the jury. So a really broad range. So I guess with that, do we want to open it to questions from attendees?
Yeah, we have a few questions. Cindy, are you still around? If you are, go ahead and
I
turn on
am.
your, okay, great. Maybe I'll field these for the panel, and then if you have, whoever wants to take it first can. I like the one from Menji. She's asking, how does one apply for something that may have no physical representation, but has historic memory or cultural heritage? Would it belong under category 7? And if so, does the requirement for the building or resource being 50 years old or listed on the register apply?
Well, I'll take a swing at it. I think that if, yes, if there's no physical representation, but it has historic memory or cultural heritage, it would go under that intangible heritage category, the 7th one. You know, what I would encourage, if, you know, if it's less than 50 years old, again, what we're looking at is this something that has been, you know, recognized? The criteria for being on a national register or local inventory may not apply here. It doesn't sound like it would if there's nothing, no physical remnants of the resource. You know, we haven't, this is a new category for us. So what I would suggest is to submit and document, explain, you know, what you really have to do is explain the significance to the jury. Bill or Andrew, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think that makes sense. I think we'd encourage you to submit and provide as much of a story as you can, or make the reasons for your application just very clear in the narrative.
Now, I don't know if I missed it earlier, but the jury has the prerogative to recategorize submissions. And
That's
generally, it doesn't really affect their decision if it's miscategorized. They just they collaborate with each other, figure out which category it should be in, and recategorize it. Then make a decision on whether or not it has won an award. Right?
That's correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
there's usually at least one or a couple projects that have been that are miscategorized, and we'll recategorize those.
Great. Judith is asking a similar vein, for an archaeological report, what type of photos are required? Can we use historic photos using before and after images to explain the project and its importance? Or do you have any other suggestions for visuals for something like archaeology?
Well, I have an answer for that, John. One is to understand the reason why we ask for photographs. We're asking for photographs to publicize the projects that are receiving awards. It's really, the photographs aren't given to the jurors. The photographs that you want the jurors to see would be included in the slide sets. So we ask for the additional photographs so that we can use them on our website when we're promoting the winning project, when we put it in the program for the event. We don't have to go back to the applicant and ask for the photos. We already have them. It's just taking us a lot of time to go back and circle after the application has been reviewed and selected to get these photographs. So we ask for them ahead of time. And so, yes, to answer your question about the historic photos, absolutely, you can submit those. We understand that there are certain types of projects where the photographs that we're seeking, or that may typically think about buildings, really don't apply. So if you're doing a report, some of the photographs that are within that report is what you can submit.
Great. And let's see here. Jan is asking, what if your project was a rehab and included contextual infill and exhibit display? So a little bit of both, it seems like. How would you determine the best category for something like that?
I can take that. So I would say that the applicant should just decide, just pick what you feel is the best category, and the jury will sort out based on what they see and categorize it. And just to be clear, the category does not denote whether or not it will receive an award or change the chances of it potentially winning or not winning an award. So just do your best to pick what you think is the right category.
Great. And Jackie is asking, what should the slides consist of? Narrative or just photographs? Or what do you recommend for the 12 slides that are required?
I'll answer. It depends. Your narrative, the slides really should augment the narrative. I mean, you don't want a lot of text in with the slides, but you do want some before, after, some key points about the photos, the elevation of the building, perhaps a brief description. What is really important about the slides is that they chronicle or kind of parallel the narrative. So the jury, keep in mind, the jury is not familiar with your project. Just go into that assuming that they don't know where it is, they don't know who did it, they've never been there before. It is your job to make it very clear to them the work that has been done and the significance of the work that was done. Why is it award worthy? So the slides, you put together a good narrative, the slides augment the narrative, but put enough information on the slides so that they can make the connection between what you're talking about in the narrative and what you're representing in the slides.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, within your slides as well, give us some context. If your project was one that brought the community together and you're in the center of a small town, give us some images of what the town is, the immediate context that we're talking about, so that we really understand it in its context.
Allison is asking about if you had any tips on photography for cultural resource studies or report submissions, where the majority of the photos that were taken, ad hoc in the field, I guess. How would somebody that does a cultural resource study communicate the photos to us?
Well, Bill and Andrew, feel free to jump in here. What the cultural resource report, again, or the photos for the cultural resource report usually would just kind of enhance or be a complement to the report. What is important about the narrative is that, well, let me back up a moment. When a report is nominated, you should include the report. So you would upload the report, it would be in the supplemental materials. But the jury may not have time to go through the report in its entirety. So it's important that the narrative give a very clear overview of what's contained in the report. The photographs can help. The slides can certainly help tell the story. But it's hard to say what you require, what we would really need in the terms of photographs. There, again, we use the 6 photos to promote the winning project. So the jury doesn't see them. If they're in the slides, that's where they'll see them. So again, the slide set, the narrative really are complements to each other. And in the case of report, it's very important that the report give a crisp overview of what's in the report, and make sure you submit the report.
So Cindy, following up on that, could the photographs for a report submission be actually photos of the report, like some of the pages of the report? Would that be considered appropriate?
They have been in the past. We've received those photographs of certain pages, particularly like if they're maps that delineate certain areas, or it's really, reports are especially hard in that. I'll just put it out there. You can take photos of the report, but the jury has a report. It's the slides are what's really important for the jury. The photographs of a report are for our use, CPS use.
And on that note, there's a question about the resolution of the images. Now, in the past, when we did the on-site design awards program, we needed to do a printed brochure, Cindy. So that, that to me, that would indicate something that's at least 300 DPI or so, but I don't know what you think. Yeah, between 200 and 300 DPI is plenty for printing. So that's what we're recommending for the high resolution images, and you only need 6 of those. Let's see what else. On the PPP or on the PPT slides, do we add captions, and do we need to add the copyright holder?
Yeah, add captions, give us a roadmap. Again, put yourself in the jury's seat. They don't know a thing assume that they know very little about this project, except for what you're giving them. You need to make it clear. So you put captions in, something simple as before, after, west elevation, east elevation, first floor, second floor. There's we've had of people that have put a lot of text in there in the slides. Again, it should kind of complement or enhance what you submit in the narrative. So we certainly would encourage you to put something in. On the other hand, we've received slides that have very little narrative, but it's been very clear on what they're trying to convey. And regarding the copyright, I would encourage anyone who's using someone else's photos to always put in the copyright or the permissions for use of the photos.
I've learned the hard way on that a few times. So Menji is asking if the project being submitted is not necessarily completed, i.e. if it is a program recognizing traditions which would be added to over time through descendants who come forward with such traditions, probably talking about category number 7 there again, would it be ineligible to be submitted for the awards?
I would say probably not necessarily, because I think that what's being submitted for the award is the establishment of the program that recognizes the traditions. So I'd say by all means, certainly submit that for an award if you think it's worthy.
Yeah,
Great.
I'd agree.
Now, I don't see any further questions. I usually like to give people a few more seconds just to type anything that they haven't asked yet if they have thought of it. But otherwise, I think we're done. And while we're closing out, Cindy, did you have any, or the three of you, do you have any final words in terms of the awards and how to submit a successful application?
Well, we would encourage, anyone who's interested that has, enough familiarity with the project and access to the necessary information to submit. We want to see this program grow. It really is our way to, as we say, celebrate the good work that people are doing around the state. So we want to acknowledge and honor everyone's good work. Just kind of as my own kind of final comment is, of the projects that we receive, I would say the majority of them are worthy of recognition. We can only give, we have to draw the line somewhere. As Bill noted, we don't have a firm number, but we want to over time see this program grow. So I would encourage people to submit. My recommendations are to take that worksheet that we have on the website, to use that to put your information in, and then it makes the online application a lot easier. The closing date for this for the awards is in, John, help me out here, it should be on the website. I think it's in May.
It is May 23rd, Monday, May 23rd.
So I've got 2 months, a little over 2 months to submit the information. Most of the applications literally come in the last week. So please, if you're considering doing this, give us both enough time to do this. The earlier you can get it in, the better for us. So
I would just add to that, I'm echoing Sydney, yes, please submit. We would love to recognize preservation all throughout the state of California. And to also remember that the jury, every year, the jury has kind of its own point of view. So if you didn't win last year or the year before, consider resubmitting this year. Consider refining your application if you can, but every jury has a very distinct kind of point of view. So there's a good chance that if you didn't win last year, you have a good chance of winning again. So please resubmit if you didn't win before.
Yeah, that's a great point, Andrew.
Yeah. And lastly, I would just add too, that the jury has a little bit of discretion in selecting projects for what we call our Trustees Award of Excellence. So every year we ask the jury if there are projects within the group of winners that is exemplary, that is example for others to follow. And these are elevated to the trustees award for excellence, and the Board of Trustees will approve the jury's recommendations for all of the winners, and then the trustees award for excellence. So that's our exalted program within the design awards.